All right, guys, welcome back. We are with Brian.
So random.
Brian Weissman. We if you guys watched the other video, it's kind of a longer video about Brian's stories. But in the hotel at the W Hotel in Seattle,
Completely at random.
yeah, I go to the bathroom. Brian's like, Daniel, what the hell is this? Did you put this here?
Yeah, I looked down. There's this random magazine called Seattle Met, which is included clearly for anybody who's staying in the hotel.
Top
And
dentist.
just like random stuff related to Seattle. And then down at the bottom, purely out of coincidence, the out of the world origins of Magic the Gathering is just sitting there on this magazine.
Why would I put that there?
Incredible.
No. Go to a page. What the hell is this
Bizarre
thing?
serendipity, yeah. Let me find the article here.
Yeah, incredible, huh?
Currents.
So, guys, again, we are going to be doing a multiple part series. This is going to be the main video about the deck, but because this is so damn random,
How can we even find it?
yeah, we're going to have to.
That is an uncanny coincidence.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. This was in. Yes.
Yeah, I remember this article.
Yes.
I read this article
Oh,
online. There's Richard and Peter.
God, this is awesome. Yeah. So that was this. Yeah. So that was the Seattle Met article.
Yeah, crazy. Just happens to be on.
Did I put that? Of course, I put that there.
No, you didn't. It's just sitting right in front of me.
All right, guys. So we're back with Brian. This is more of the formal deck tech of the deck. Brian is obviously well known for I would say, inventor or the creator of this idea, or I'll let you kind of explain.
Both words.
Yeah. And we'll, let's kind of dive into it. This is going to be a very detailed video, guys. I know this is probably going to be pretty long. I appreciate you guys watching the videos. Again, if you have questions, comments, Brian wants to hear your questions. Put them below. We were going to do a follow-up video. And again, Brian, let's take it away.
All right. So I have, for the most part, all of the original cards that were in the deck, assembled for the first time in mid-1994. Probably, I want to say, by May of 1994, I had nearly all of its components in play. And the reason why I know that is because its sort of big breakout debut tournament was a tournament called Dundracon, which was held at a big hotel in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was shortly after the release of The Dark. And I know that because the guy that I faced in the finals was playing with main deck Blood Moons.
Ah.
And that card...
That wrecks it.
That card caused me more personal grief and anguish and emotional turmoil than probably just about any card in all of Magic's history. This is back when I actually had a lot of emotional attachment to individual cards. And I couldn't even believe when I saw the spoiler for The Dark, or at least saw Blood Moon for the first time, that Wizards would have the temerity to create something so incredibly unfun and destructive to the deck that I played. So the guy I played in the finals of that tournament was playing with main deck Blood Moons, and I hated him for it.
Did you win that match?
I did.
Wow.
I beat him 2 out of 3. He beat me game 1. I think I beat him just with Sarah Angels very quickly.
Yeah.
His deck was mono red, so he was super vulnerable to moat. Game 2, he ritualed out or Black Lotus out a Juggernaut on turn 1, and I just had nothing to kill it, and it hit me 4 times and killed me. And then game 3, I Lotus out moat on turn 1, and it just killed his whole deck.
Right.
And I actually had basic land in the sideboard. No basic land main deck to deal with Blood Moon, but I had basic lands in the sideboard, and that was enough of a cushion to be able to beat him. I think I got very lucky that game. I think I Chaos Orbed away a Blood Moon and drew Mox Pearl and was able to disenchant them, so I won. I won fairly easily, but I want to get to the cards.
Yes, let's go. The cards are the star, or
All
Brian.
right, so the old school format is really interesting because people are really fanatical about this format. It seems to have quite a following, especially in Europe, and I guess it was pioneered in Sweden.
Yeah, yes.
And then Randy Buehler played and won some big tournament a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
August of 2015, I think, using the deck but with abysses and no creatures. And that got a lot more people interested in the format, I think, because of his renown. It had been more of a niche thing. Got me very interested in it too. And of course, I've kept all of my cards. I've fortunately been in a position where I never had to sell the bulk of the value of my collection. And it was very interesting reading Randy's list, because I felt like he had gotten a lot of things right and with some major omissions. But there's a few things about the format, and I'll get to this as I go through the cards in here, that make old school Magic remarkably different from the format that I played. There are particular restrictions that exist now on the format, and there's two, I think, competing formats. There's the Swedish version of it, and then there's the other format that I think was played at the major event in the United States.
It's called Eternal Central.
Eternal
Rules.
Central.
Yeah.
The one that Eternal Weekend or whatever, the one that Menendian wrote a big long article about. That format is different from the Swedish one, and I prefer that format by quite a bit, mainly because of one card.
Strip
We'll
mine.
get to that. Yeah, it's this one.
Ah.
The strip mine. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So starting off with the deck tech, I'm going to start with spells first.
Okay.
And so for starters, the staple removal spell. It's the best removal
All
spell
collector's edition.
ever printed. The best removal spell ever printed in Magic, obviously, Swords to Plowshares. And there isn't too much to say about this card, other than the fact that it actually took a while for players to figure out how good this card really was. Their initial impression of players when they first started playing the game was that gaining life was important, protecting life was important, and giving your opponent life was a bad thing. And surprisingly, you'd run against white decks that did not use Swords to Plowshares, or maybe they used one or two, but people would feel bad. They would feel anxious about giving their opponent life, and it would actually make them question whether or not the card was good.
Wow.
Of course, people that understood the game better, a little bit higher level, recognized how strong it was, and obviously the best players realized this card is absolutely mandatory for solves nearly every problem until they started printing. Well, really, Fallen Empires is what kind of took some of the shine off this card, because everyone was playing Black Pump Knights.
Right.
And Pump Knights were a very hard counter to Swords to Plowshares. That said, you still definitely play 4 in Old School. There are way too many good targets not to use them. That brings me to the next 4 of. It's also white.
Started seeing white is the best color, huh? In some ways.
White actually is a good color. That's the difference. White's role in Magic in the early days was very hard to define, because the creatures weren't really all that exceptional, with the exception of Sarah Angel. People hadn't really figured out how good Savannah lands were for a long time.
Right.
And so when people played white, it was really just these 2 cards, and occasionally Sarah Angels.
So Disenchant, let's talk about this baby.
Yeah, well, Disenchant, it's funny because in any modern context, Disenchant wouldn't even be a sideboard card. But back in that era, Disenchant was mandatory. I actually when I look at most of the deck lists that I played back then, I only ran 3 usually. And the reason is because there were plenty of decks that Disenchant wasn't all that helpful against, because the only things you'd be killing were Moxes and occasionally the Soul Ring. And most of those decks were not 5 colors. So people did not tend to run off-color Moxes.
Right.
Even the decks that were really aggressive. So maybe someone would be playing black, red, green, a land destruction deck. They'd only have the Ruby and the Jet and the Emerald in their deck. And Black Vice is a card that would loom really large over the format, but it was restricted for nearly the entire period of time when I played this format. And that's also one of the big exceptions. Black Vice doesn't tend to be restricted in versions of Old School. I don't know if it's legal as a 4 in the Eternal Weekend version, but
I think it is.
I think
you can do both.
Unrestricted. I'm pretty sure the Swedes though have.
No, they recently they allowed 4Fs also.
They allowed 4Fs.
I think so.
I saw a deck list played by Ule Rade, a red-blue deck.
Yeah.
That had only 1 Vice in it, which seemed weird to me. It seems weird that you'd run 1 Vice if you could run more.
Right.
If you just wanted to use the card at all. But it served a particular purpose. But Black Vice was restricted for most of the time, and that card being restricted made Disenchant worse.
Right.
That said, in modern Old School, where so many decks are running artifact overload, upwards of 16, 17 artifacts in some of them, not too many enchantments really, but just unbelievable amounts of artifacts, 4 Disenchants is automatic.
Right.
You run 4 Disenchants without a second thought. And honestly, you'd probably want to run more of the effect if you could main deck.
Right.
There's Divine Offering exists as an instant solution. We'll get to that in the sideboard. But the fact that it doesn't kill enchantments can matter sometimes, because people play Sylvan Library, for example. And there's things like Chains of Mephistopheles and Nether Void. There are a few other.
And Blood Moon, sideboard, yeah. And there's and Energy Flux.
Yes, and Energy Flux too, which a lot of people play now and they did not use back then. Final white card. I'm running a Singleton Moat.
Only 1, huh?
Yeah, back in the day I ran 2 of these guys, and that was because you saw a lot more ground creatures, a lot more decks running Urnam Djinn and Jazam Djinn, as well as there were just a lot more in general, more aggro decks that use cards like Curd Ape Elvish Archers, Savannah Lions. They did run Mishra's Factories, although not too much. Whirling Dervish was a card that was around a lot. But main deck Moat was really, really key. And there were Goblin decks too. And so I ran 2 copies of Moat and have just felt like there are too many decks that are either dedicated control now, or the decks that are aggressive are running way more flyers than they used to. They all have Serendip Efreet. A lot of them are running Hypnotic Spectre. Ule's deck was running 4 copies of Flying Men, for example. There's just a lot more flyers. I think Indian was running even a Serendip Djinn in his deck.
Right.
So they're getting around Moat, and I think that having a single copy of the card is still really important, because you need to have this tool, because of it's the stone cold nuts against certain strategies. If you just get it early with a tutor, or you just happen to have it, you just kill their entire deck. Every ground creature they draw is dead until they solve the Moat problem. And you can often just protect the Moat, and they can't do anything to you, really.
Exactly.
It just gives you peace of mind, and it makes the Disrupting Scepter and the Mind Twist in the deck a lot better, too, because they don't want to necessarily play all their creatures onto the board because they don't do anything, and then the creatures are just sitting in their hand ready to be removed. So that's all the white in the main deck. I'm going to move over to blue.
Yep.
So, naturally, there are 4 copies of Counterspell in here. And you guys got a bit of a taste of the counterspells that I actually ran back in the day. When you guys saw you watched the deck tech that Daniel did a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's the one with Jeff, the one he 4 mana drains.
Where he's got 4 copies of Mana Drain. And this, honestly, is one of the biggest structural diversions from the way that the deck played in 1994, 1995, 1996 versus the old school versions. This may not seem like that big of a deal, and that, okay, these cards seem like they're functionally the same. They're both 2 blue mana hard counters. And Counterspell seems like it's a very, very strong card, an auto-include of 4 of, and so on. But this card is garbage compared to this one. Mana Drain is so utterly insane, so completely on a power level above every other counterspell ever printed. There are people that say, oh, Force of Will is the best counterspell that they've ever made in Magic. But I'll say something controversial. Mana Drain, absolutely the strongest counterspell ever made. It runs circles around Force Will. Force Will has a place.
Wow.
Force Will is incredibly empowering and enabling for combo decks. But as a defensive card, Force of Will is honestly not that strong, because, and especially in this era, in modern day, decks run very, very tight mana bases. They run far fewer lands. There are way, way, way more ways to tutor up card draw in modern vintage. You also get a lot more value out of individual cards. But in the old school days, we were playing with Jam-Day Tome, a 4 mana artifact that you have to invest 8 mana in casting and in activation to draw a single card, which is laughably weak by modern standards, where you can just draw cards with abandon. There's a million different ways to draw tons and tons of cards in modern vintage. And because of that, there were far, far fewer ways to garner card advantage in the old days. You had to play with these very slow and clunky artifacts, outside of the restrictor list, which of course you couldn't count on. But Mana Drain allowed you to power out a lot of those card advantage artifacts, because you could just counter something on turn 2 and play a Disrupting Scepter or play a Jam-Day Tome without having to surrender your defense. It gave you tremendous tempo, but the most important thing of all about the card was that it punished proactivity. And the way that it is now, and I actually had this experience when I played in an old school tournament back around the New Year in New Zealand, and I played against a deck in the finals that was 4 Jazam Djinn, 4 Urnam Djinn, 4 Spectres, and Sinkholes, and Hymn to Torak, because Fallen Empires was legal. And it was a deck type that, while was somewhat effective back in the day, would not have worked in the era that I played this deck in, because of the difference of having 1 Mana Drain versus 4. Because if your opponent is playing with Mana Drains in their deck, you can't just indiscriminately start slamming threats on turn 2 and turn 3. You can't just play a Serendip Djinn into Island.
Right.
You can't play a Jazam Djinn into 2 untapped blue mana, because if they have a Mana Drain and some incredibly wide range of cards, you literally lose the game on the spot.
Right.
The card is so powerful in terms of its ability to make a defensive deck like the deck function proactively. Force of Will is very, very strong. It allows you to push through combos. It's something that allowed combo decks to flourish once people discovered how good it was. But as a defensive card, especially when someone has sideboarded in cards like Red Elemental Blast and stuff, Force of Will doesn't work, because if you're pitching all these extra cards, you're making your hand size down to nothing,
right,
to try to either defend your position or to push something through. There's no way to recover the card advantage. because if you throw away 2 extra cards to cast Force of Will, your hand size is down to 2. You're not going to be able to just regenerate all those cards back with the Jam-Day Tome. It's going to take many, many turns to do it. So using Force of Will as a defensive thing doesn't really make a lot of sense. I did ultimately run with, later on once Force of Will was around, the counters that I ran were 4 Forces of Will, 4 Mana Drains, and 2 counter spells. But the Mana Drains were the main engine.
By far superior, yeah.
By far superior.
Yeah, you guys heard it first. Brian Weissman just basically said, Force of Will, you're out. Mana Drain in.
Yeah, well, I ran both of them.
Yeah, but you're saying if you rank superiority.
Yeah, the format had to change. When Force of Will was printed, I didn't run 4 of them. It took me a long time. And as the format accelerated, and it was actually Pat Chapin in matches that he and I used to play sort of on the side of pro events, we would play games with a big crowd of people watching, and Chapin would always play combo against me. It was those games against Chapin that really began to push me in the direction of having to use more Forces of Will. Because of the fact that if he's playing some sort of ridiculous Mana Crypt, Tolarian Academy, Candelabra of Tawnos thing, I need to have Force Will in my opening draw because he has so many starts that I need to have Force or I just lose to.
Right.
And that pushed the deck in the direction of 4 Forces of Will. But until combo decks really started to rise, and they were, of course, completely enabled by Force of Will, I think I only ran 2 copies of the card. So the counter spells that I ran before Alliances was printed, I ran 4 Mana Drain, just 2 Counterspell, and 2 Red Elemental Blasts, actually.
Okay. So that's it's probably good we maybe review this later on. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about the sequencing of when did they, because nowadays we're playing old school. There's only 1 Mana Drain.
Yeah, and that's so different because it's just this random thing that rears its head from time to time, and you're reminded just of how insane the card is when your opponent Mana Drains you. You feel like, oh my god.
Guys, imagine if you were playing 4 Mana Drains with the deck, it'd be even more powerful.
Yeah, totally. And you combine that with the artifacts that win you the game, as well as with explosive turns like Time Twister following a Mana Drain, or Brain Geysering for 6 cards, or Mind Twist, obviously, is the main thing. And the fact that if your opponent has 2 blue mana represented, like let's say the game starts and I go first and I play land, my opponent plays a land, I play a second mana, they play a second land. On my third turn I've got Serendib Efreet in my hand. Well, I could play Serendib Efreet and lose the game on the spot if the guy has Mana Drain and Mind Twist. The game is just instantly over.
Wow.
He Mana Drains the Serendib, he untaps, plays a third land, and twists my entire hand away. And I've got 3 land and nothing.
Oh my god.
You're literally dead on the spot. And that would happen it happened regularly enough that you had to be cognizant of it. Plus, a lot of decks would use Amnesia as well.
Sure.
Because Amnesia works perfectly in that interaction. It's 3 blue mana and 3 colorless mana. So you would Mana Drain the 3 mana spell, play your third mana, and Amnesia their entire hand away. So you had to just play completely different against 4 Mana Drains versus now. In old school, Counterspell's strong, but it's basically just it's a 1-to-1 interaction. You can just run threats into counterspells all day long, knowing that the worst thing they can possibly do is just counterspell you. They can't Mana Drain you and have 4 extra mana on their next turn to kill you.
So when is the right time to Mana Drain? That's a great. Sometimes I hold Mana Drain.
No, you're right. You have to be judicious with.
You got to use it at the right point, right?
Not only because Mana Burn is still a thing, but also because if you've got Counterspell and Mana Drain in your hand, sometimes you really do have to think. Obviously, there's no-brainer cases where Mana Drain a 3 mana thing, and you know that you've got a Jam-Day Tome in your hand, you're going to have to play for free. But you do have to sometimes ration it, which is something you wouldn't do before. And I barely played any counter spells anyway. Counter spell, like this card. Exactly, I only played 2 copies of that, and I played 4 copies of Mana Drain.
Great.
So anyway, there'll be more to say about Mana Drain later on down the road, but I stick to the statement though. The most powerful counter spell ever printed. Force of Will may have more utility in general and have more applicability to a broader set of formats, but in terms of raw strength, Mana Drain easily number 1, and completely format warping to the point where old school as it stands now is radically different from the format that was played back then because of the restriction of this 1 card. Moving on. Red. So I've chosen to use 2 copies of Lightning Bolt. There are decks that are running Fireball in place of this card, sometimes 1 or 2, and when I started building old school decks again, I put Fireballs on my deck just thinking that they would be better, but because this is such a Mishra's Factory heavy format, I've found that the general speed and utility of Fireball of Lightning Bolt outweighs the potential that Fireball has. And when your opponent's got 2 Mishra's Factories in play and you've got a Fireball in your hand, you're feeling pretty dumb.
Yep.
As they just swing and hit you for 4 turn after turn. Additionally, there's turn 1 threats like Hypnotic Spectre's coming out on turn 1, and the Spectre might hit you twice and take the Fireball out of your hand before you're able to Lightning Bolt it. Lightning Bolt is compact damage. It combines well if you're brought in Mirror Universe as well to just do a little bit of damage to finish your opponent off, but its general utility against early threats, as well as the Mishra's Factory game, I think puts it in front of Fireball, and that's why I've chosen to use it.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that choice also.
I have a single copy of Red Elemental Blast, and this is just to bring the total number of counters in the deck up to 6. And I feel that one Red Blast is enough in that it's a perpetual threat. It comes up often enough that you can represent it whenever you've got untapped red mana. Your opponent always has to take the card into account whenever they're doing something like Demonic Tutoring for an Ancestral Recall, or tapping out to cast a Brain Geyser, or casting a Time Twister or something.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to win counter wars that your opponent didn't expect. Often they'll strip mine a land of yours thinking that they can cast 2 spells and fighting back with a counter spell, and when you Red Blast back, they don't know what to do. And of course, a lot of the time people will cast a spell assuming that you're going to respond with a blue spell, and they've got Red Blast to protect whatever it is they want to cast, and you have a Red Blast to stop whatever that spell, well, assuming it's blue, and suddenly their entire game plan is stymied by that. But I think the single copy of Red Elemental Blast, it doesn't hurt you enough against decks that it's not great against, and even the decks that you might even consider siding Red Blast out against, like maybe a mono black deck, those decks even still will usually run Ancestral Recall and Time Walk, and often Brain Geyser as well. So having the Red Blast to stop those is good. Plus, everyone's running stupid Serendipity Freak, so this is just extra redundant removal for Serendipity.
You know, I find myself misplaying Red Blast on a Counter Wars. What's the sequencing generally? Do you put the big mana the Red Blast up front?
Yeah, that depends. It really depends. It's one of those situations where I can't think of, there's no hard rule for it. Sure. In terms of the ordering, because sometimes it is correct to play the Red Blast first, and sometimes it's better to play it afterward.
Interesting.
And commit. It has a lot to do with a larger philosophical thing that I'll discuss later. But
okay.
My philosophy about counters, this is something I've talked about a lot in my Commander, my EDH videos on YouTube. The general rule is don't have more counters in your hand than you can play in one turn. And that means if I'm sitting there and I've got 3 counter spells in my hand, and I've got 3 blue mana in play, and my opponent casts something that's relatively innocuous, like a Mox, for example, or something that's not critical, a Felwar Stone, I will 100% of the time counterspell it. And it's not because I need to deal with that threat. The threat may not even ultimately impact the game at all. It's more that I want to get this counterspell out of my hand, because the opportunity to play 2 or 3 counterspells in one turn is potentially 8 turns into the future, right? Depending on what happens. There's no reason to have redundant counterspells in your hand. It's more important to just impact the board and get an interaction right now with the card and get it out of your hand. Plus, people are playing with Balance, Time Twister, and Wheel of Fortune, which are reset cards. You feel super stupid when you've got 3 blue in play and you didn't counterspell 2 Moxes in a row, and then the guy goes Wheel of Fortune, Red Blast on you. Right? Because then you miss the opportunity to keep 3 permanents out of play, and you've got all these counters sitting in your hand doing nothing. And now he's got a 2 or 3 permanent advantage on you because you didn't use the counterspells that you couldn't play. Much better to just play the counterspell. Sure, you have 1 less in your hand, but it doesn't do anything in your hand anyway if you can't play it on this consecutively on the same turn. Right, so Red Blast is very handy in that regard. So in a situation like I just described, maybe I've got UU and I've got 2 blue mana and a 3rd mana, maybe it's a red mana source like a Volcanic Island or something. My opponent plays a blue spell. I could Red Blast it, but I'll opt to counterspell it instead because I've got an additional counterspell in my hand along with my Red Blast. It would feel better to Red Blast it, but I can only play 1 counterspell in that turn. So I'm going to just get one of them out of my hand, and that way I can still interact twice on a critical turn like a Time Twister or a Brain Geyser by going counterspell and Red Blast on the same turn. Got it. So that's sort of a rule I follow, although again, it's like everything in Magic, it's not set in stone. Sure. Final red card in the main deck, Big Papa Shivan. This thing featured heavily in the games against Clint. I've now upgraded to a real beta 1. And this is a divergence from the creature that I was known for back in the day, which of course was Sarah Angel. And I'm running Shivan for a couple of reasons. For one, interesting. Sonic Blast is everywhere now. All the aggressive decks are running Side Blast. Right. And that's something that was not as common back in the day. Additionally, I am running, and I'll get to that later, but this is a Blood Moon based version of my deck. And I made a judgment call to basically, there's two ways that you can approach your mana base in the format. Most people who are playing control decks in old school have opted to go the Felwar Stone Mishra's Factory route. And my route is not, I'm not taking that route at all. I'm actually the guy with the Blood Moons, because Blood Moon is very powerful in an aggro deck, but it is super insane in a control deck because of the fact that a control deck has the ability to sculpt a situation where the Blood Moon is a complete lock on the game perpetually. It's not just, this is an annoying artifact, enchantment that's going to sit around until my opponent draws their Mox Pearl and gets rid of it, or draws their Chaos Orb. This is like, I'm casting this, and 20 turns later, it's still in play, and you're never getting rid of it because I'm playing a control deck. It's just a different situation. So I'm using the Blood Moon as a card advantage card, and that strategy is conducive to using Shivan Dragon as a finisher, because if I've locked my opponent out of all of their mana and locked myself out of most of my mana, because the Blood Moon screws me over pretty badly too. It's not like my deck flourishes with it in play. It's just that my deck is a little bit less screwed up than theirs is. I can still function, just not well. You might recall a game that we played where I had Blood Moon in play against you for ages.
Yes.
But I had one source of blue mana in an island, and I had strip mined away your one basic island.
Right.
So you couldn't do anything, and I had that single blue, which eventually drew me Ancestral.
I need the power artifact with double blue, but yeah.
Yeah, you could never ever cast it. Your entire deck was wrecked by that one enchantment.
Yeah.
And if you have Blood Moon in play, you cast Shivan Dragon for free, and the next turn it hits for 12 and just wipes them out in one turn.
Right.
The Shivan's an incredibly fast clock. It allows you to you get one moment of vulnerability, one moment where they have no answer in their hand, Shivan comes down and they're just dead before there's any response.
Right.
The card is honestly quite analogous to Mirror Universe back in the day. We used Mirror Universe as our primary kill condition, actually, for a number of years. And unfortunately, there was, although many people would say fortunately, but there was a major change to the rules that invalidated Mirror Universe as an autonomous win condition. It used to be trivial, absurdly, stupidly easy to kill someone with Mirror. The reason is because the rules dictated at the time, and this is the same reason the Prosperous Bloom deck was so good, the one that Mike Long used to win Pro Tour Paris in 1997. Actually, that was 1996. Okay. The rules said at the time that if you went to 0 or even negative life, you did not die until the end of the phase, which meant you could go into 0 or even negative life totals. As long as you finished the end of the phase with positive life, you could win the game. So the old Prosperous Bloom deck would go and take shitloads of damage while it was casting this card called Contract from Below. You'd pay half of your life rounded down, and you would basically just damage yourself, and you would go negative sometimes. You'd go into negative life. And people played this other deck called Storm Drain in Type 1. And Storm Drain was a deck that used Fast Bond and Storm Cauldron, a card that basically says whenever you tap a land for mana, either player it comes back to your hand. So Fast Bond and Storm Cauldron allowed you to get infinite mana. You'd play a land, tap it for mana, it would return to your hand, you'd replay it, paying a life, and put it back in your hand, and you would just generate infinite mana, and of course you'd take infinite damage. But it didn't matter because you didn't die until the end of the turn, and then you would fuel a huge drain life on your opponent, which would kill them and bring you back up to positive life totals, and you'd win.
Wow.
So anyway, but the reason why that mattered with Mirror Universe, of course, was that with the Mirror Universe in play, you'd play it, and you'd be at, let's say, 10. And at the end of your opponent's turn, you would tap 6 land and a City of Brass to mana burn yourself for 6 plus the city is 7 plus 1 damage off the city, so you'd be down to 2. And you'd have multiple counterspells in your hand to protect the situation, so even if they had a lightning bolt, you didn't actually mana burn until the end of the phase, which meant that they didn't have an opportunity to bolt you while you were at 2, because the next thing that happened was the untap step. So you'd go into the untap step, you'd tap another land during the untap step, burn transitioning from the untap step to the upkeep.
Right.
So you'd be at 1.
Right.
Now you enter your upkeep. You've got Mirror Universe sitting there. You'd tap your City of Brass. The damage would resolve from the city. You'd be at 0. And then you'd swap life with the mirror, and you'd hand them 0 life.
For the rule, yeah.
And the rule was you didn't die till the end of the turn, so you'd get whatever life they had, and they would get 0, and they would be dead. So the mirror was crazy powerful because it would just come down, you just burn yourself. There was almost no way to interact with it other than just disenchanting it. And of course, it would be protected by counterspell. So it was an even faster finisher than any creature. But of course, Mirror Universe doesn't function that way. You can't kill someone with it by itself, which means that having a creature-based finisher is quite good.
When did they change that rule? Back in the day.
Yeah, I think it was the 6th edition rules.
Okay.
It was the same rules that introduced combat on the stack, actually. So anyway, and so moving on. Shivan Dragon, Abyss finisher, and I don't use Abyss, so...
Sorry, Randy, no Abyss here.
No Abysses in my deck. There are definitely valid arguments for using Abyss, but I don't use them. I don't use the card. I use Mode instead because I finish with a Shivan Dragon.
All right, perfect.
And okay, so
one green card.
Regrowth. Yep, this is just a staple of the format. Regrowth, unrestricted now, I think, in current vintage, and nobody plays it.
What?
But back in the day, this was a restricted card, and rightfully should be because it allows you to cast Ancestral Recall multiple times.
Kind of a no-brainer. It's such a good card.
It is, and it allows recursive loops with Time Twister, which is one of the main reasons why it was actually restricted. Regrowth's an awesome card.
This is the cards that I really. Oh, you played 3 tomes.
3 tomes and 1 scepter.
Now, why not 2/2?
That's a good question.
Interesting.
This is a divergence from the set that I played back in the day. Back in the old school era, I ran 2 copies of Disrupting Scepter and only a single Jam Day tome. And that's a product of the mana drain era. The fact that when you're mana draining a spell, you'd want to be able to the activation of the scepter is lower than the tome. You'd want to be able to mana drain something relatively small and throw a Disrupting Scepter out there quite quickly and then protect it. And it didn't take very much mana to activate a scepter every turn. You only required 5 to use a scepter and cast a single counterspell. And so you would just whittle their hand down quite quickly. Plus, obviously, the strategy of the deck was, I mean, it's a multi-pronged strategy, but getting your opponent's hand size down to 0 was one of the main goals that you were trying to achieve. And having 2 scepters allows you to do that quite a bit better than trying to do it with a card like Mind Twist, for example. You know, a lot of decks just have a single discard spell, whereas the deck was really devoted to that line. But now I'm playing 3 copies of Jam Day Tome and only a single scepter, mainly because the way that the format is sped up quite a bit, and a lot more people playing mid-range aggressive creatures and stuff, less dedicated control decks. So the Jam Day Tomes are a more consistent way to win the game in the mid game.
Financiers, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot more people playing Twister and Wheel of Fortune as well.
Yeah,
and Scepter's not as good against that.
Right.
So Tomes have the added advantage of being able to draw cards on your opponent's turn, not having to commit the mana right away. I'm not positive that this is the right balance. It feels right to me, but it could be that only 2 tomes is correct. It could be that 2 and 2 is correct. It could be that not even using Disrupting Scepter is correct. Although every time I draw the Scepter, I'm reminded of just how insanely powerful it really is.
Right.
And
no, I like the. Yeah, I'll have to try that because I've always the 2/2.
Yeah, 2 and 2 is totally valid, honestly.
Sure.
It's just that I find that the tomes have slightly more utility. You think of the situation where if I have a tome and you have a scepter, I'm probably winning that. Because drawing 2 cards a turn has more value than drawing your 1 card a turn and making your opponent discard a card of their choice per turn.
Card advantage, guys. It's always about card
advantage in either direction. But if I have a tome in play and you have a scepter, I'm going to draw into my disenchants faster than you are.
But I think it's the match. I think it's the matchup thing you said was very, very clear because there's so many aggro options or just small little creature options. They're already ditching their creatures anyway.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of those things that I don't think that there's a set in stone rule about it. This feels right to me right now based on the way the metagame is.
Sure.
I could easily be wrong and be playing a different ratio of these cards down the road.
Right.
But for the time being, this is what I'm using in my version.
Okay.
And then of course I've got the Chaos Orb.
This card's so good, huh?
Yeah, this card is. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Of course, the way that we played it for
this is the original one you had for a long time.
Yeah, this is my original Beta Chaos Orb.
Oh wow.
The way that the card was played for many years, we played what was called Desert Twister rules.
Okay.
And I think the way that it's played, I haven't played in an old school tournament with the guys in Sweden, but I suspect the way that it's played now is that you declare a single target and you flip it at that target.
Now show us. You might as well show us. How do you flip it?
All right. My technique is holding the card directly over the card on its edge, guys. If you want to learn how to throw Chaos Orb correctly, this is
you just landed right on it.
Extremely accurate way to land. Yeah.
So you're holding it like whoa.
Yeah, I missed there.
Brian Weissman missed.
But I would say my accuracy with this style is probably 95%.
So what do you do with your wrist? You're just kind of.
Yeah. The trick is flipping, giving it enough rotations so that you're a foot above the table and it falls straight down while rotating.
Have you ever missed a Chaos Orb flip when it really mattered?
In recent memory, no.
Okay.
You can see I'm actually throwing it from without even getting over the card. If I was in a serious tournament, you get over it, directly over it. So you make sure you're directly above it. You can see how many times.
See the way you're doing, the way you're saying, and then you see your ending goes to your knees. But the thing is, when people first do your technique, they could easily flare it too far out.
Totally, it'll hit on the edge.
Yeah,
there's many ways to screw this up. I've done this thousands of times.
Yeah, you gotta practice. Yeah, you gotta practice.
But yeah, I have a black belt in Chaos Orb. When it's your livelihood, you don't tend to miss very often.
When you're doing this for when you're trying to Brian can do this for hours. We should have a roll of an hour of Chaos Orb flipping with Brian. And see, it's kind of like Steph Curry playing basketball and not missing free throws. Three pointers and free throws.
Basically, if you ever have to get down to a tiebreaker against me in an old school tournament, to flip a Chaos Orb. All right, let's continue on because we're at 35 minutes. We're going to try to see what we can do this midday. We'll at least finish the cards before we can do a separate video
for the lands. Yeah, that's fine.
But anyway, Chaos Orb is one of the reasons, actually, if you see me playing on camera or whatever, I play in a grid.
Right.
With my cards spread far out. There's multiple reasons why I do that.
And we'll do that for the lands. We'll do a little grid because Brian has a very unique grid concept.
Yeah, all these cards, all these Type 1 cards stacked on each other is triggering me right now. So,
Brian's a little OCD there. All right,
moving on to black spells.
This card is nasty.
Demonic.
Oh no, that's not it.
Yeah, that's no brainer, of course. Arguably the best black card ever made. Certainly top 3.
I heard a story from a guy just recently from Netherlands. He had an opportunity 6 years ago to buy the Demonic Tutor original art for $5,000.
Oh my god!
And he just said, "Well, that's too much money." Oh, I know.
It's such a great
everybody would literally just die for that card.
That's crazy. Okay, and then the only white border card in my deck. This is an original altered
by Brian Weissman.
A Brian Weissman original. Way back in the day, before this card was banned from Type 1. It was the defining, decisive tool that everyone used. Pretty much every game between control decks came down to how Mind Twist was utilized, whether or not you were able to successfully resolve it against your opponent. And because of its impact on the game, and because of how it made you feel utterly ruined, I felt that a skull and crossbones was the appropriate thing to put on it. So
I don't know, man. He's smiling.
He's grinning, right?
That's good.
So plenty of people got this thing pointed at them.
I think Clint experienced that too.
Clint definitely got to experience.
I think for both games.
Yeah. So unfortunately, when I think that
what's the line?
I'm skeptical of my ability to capture lightning in a bottle as far as creating the picture that looks that good a second time.
How many cards do you have? Oh, okay.
Artist.
Well, that's good.
So that's why I don't have a black bordered version of it.
All right.
I got it right once on a revised one, so I've stuck with that. I haven't made a black border one. So, but it's easy to find. I tutor for it all the time in a single white border card and an all.
So that's a good tutor. That's a tutor item for sure.
It's a very common tutor target. Yeah. And arguably one of the most powerful cards in all of Magic, and certainly in old school format. Although it's interesting that it was unrestricted eventually in modern Vintage, and nobody uses it, which is
crazy.
I mean, it just shows you where the formats come. And then, of course, the blue restricted list that everyone is very familiar with. There isn't a great deal to say about that, probably other than the inclusion of Time Twister.
So we got 3 of the Power 9 guys. We got the Brain Geyser. Interacts well with Mana Drain. I think I experienced that. Clint experienced